Hi everyone, we are back in the Sefer Pele Yoetz. We're still on the letter Aleph. We're on chapter 4, and this is Ahava Ish Vayisha. I gotta tell you, this one we may do it in two parts, for the reason being that I think this is gonna be probably the one of the most serious topics that Pele Yoetz covers. It's a very serious topic, and due to its nature and also the length of it, we're going to perhaps break this up in two, because this is really an issue that cannot be rushed through. But with Hashem's help, I pray that He will give me all the compassion that Hashem is known for. I pray that He would bestow just a portion of that, so that I'm able to give over this year with all the compassion that it deserves for anyone who's finding themselves in this situation. And know that as I'm giving you this shore, know that I myself have passed through this kind of situation. So I have to tell you that there is hope. And Hashem is with you in everything, and always remember that everything is coming from Hashem. So let's get right into it, because this is a very tough topic. So love of husband and wife. So it says that the love between a husband and a wife must be a passionate one. We will begin with the love of the husband to his wife, for the declaration of our sages, Yevamot 62b, is known that the husband is obligated to love his wife as himself and to honor her more than himself. Nonetheless, he may not compromise his service to Hashem because of his love for her. So it's funny, my husband and I, we have this we have this understanding between each other, and we both understand that we are number two to each other, and we come second only to Hashem. But the great thing about making Hashem number one is that when you begin to take on His attributes and to really follow in His example, it really does feel like you are number one, because you really start to learn the derech eretz. You start to learn some manners on how to treat one another, and sometimes we don't always get it right, but for sure we understand. We have an understanding that we are both number two, and we're both proud to be number two, second to Hashem. So it says, the Tana in Avot 1:5 already cautioned, do not speak excessively with a woman. This is referring to one's wife. For anyone who doesn't speak, who does speak excessively with a woman, causes evil to himself, is idle from words of Torah, and in the end will inherit Gehinnom. This is because what happens a lot of times, we, as women, and again, I'm going to throw myself on the sword. We have a tendency sometimes, we like to talk things out, right? And sometimes I think, even myself, I really had to, tame this. You tend to talk a lot. And again, I've already thrown myself on the sword. I'll do it again, at times about nonsense, making mountains out of molehills. And this is taking away time from time that he could be learning. And this is a very serious problem, because, women don't have a Yetzirah in learning Torah, which is why we love to do it all day, all night, whenever. It's not per se our mitzvah. It is the mitzvah of the man. So that's why he has a Yetzirah in it. Our biggest mitzvah is sniyut, which is why we have a big Yetzirah. And you don't see this issue with men. Men are generally pretty sniyut. It's very rare to see a man who's very vulgar in his nudity in public or anything of that nature. But we're, like I said, in all things we're seeing more and more of everything. But so excessive talking about nonsense, it kind of deters from time from the Torah, and in the end he will inherit Gehinnom. So our sages say in Baba Metzia 59a, one who goes after the counsel of his wife falls into Gehinnom. In the light of this condition, every wise man must act with cleverness. So it says, as our sages commented in Sanhedrin 107b, the left hand should push away as the right hand brings close. Now, this is a saying that we hear oftentimes with a lot of things. as the left hand is really coming to symbolize, judgment, strict judgment, while the right symbolizes chesed. So as the primary love is the love of the soul, it is incumbent upon the husband to admonish his wife with pleasant words to guide her in the ways of modesty, to distance her from slander, anger, cursing, the mention of God's name in vain, and similar things, and in the orders of nashim and nezakim. So, this is another issue where I think it's part of the problem of our generation is that, I was in a shir and my Rav, he made a great point. And he said that, a lot of the men of this generation, they don't really know they don't have derech eretz. And part of the reason is because they've not grown up, observing Torah and learning about it. They've kind of, a lot of them have been really immersed in secular culture. And, in the secular culture, unfortunately, day after day, there's excessive violence, excessive nudity. And this is a problem, not even just for the man, it's also for the women. And I think if you're traveling anywhere where there's a highway, already, even the billboards, and I was actually just speaking with my aunt today, and we were commenting that how I was telling my kids that there was a time that you would never see such a thing in public. You would just never see such a thing. It would be such a shameful thing. Even if it was like a woman's lingerie magazine, those things were so discreetly delivered to women, and they targeted to women. And nowadays it seems like that they're targeted for the man. So this is a big problem in our generation. Part of that is because, both sides, I think not just the men, but the women, we're just not educating ourselves in Torah. And like I said, we are not our grandmothers and our great grandmothers. That's a different generation where they understood a little bit more about tzniut. In my family, I think I don't even think you would dare to even think, right? I think even the thought that somebody knew you were thinking about going out the house and you weren't tzniut, my God, it would bring chills down your spine. So, of course, this is not something that concerns our youth today. So a very serious problem. But if you are, if you've gone to yeshiva, and this is an area now, it's a responsibility of the man to teach her, about tzniut, about these things, about gossiping with her friends, about things of that nature, being angry, cursing, really, things that really will bring shame, not only on her, but to the husband and to the whole family. So we're going to continue on. So you should caution her in the regard to the details of the mitzvot, especially in the areas of prayer, blessing, of benefit from this world, the observance of Shabbat, and etc. How good and how pleasant it would be for him to teach her ideas of ethical improvement, to share her words of the sages in all matters that are relevant to her and their severity. Then her heart will tremble and she will be even more careful than the man. And this is true. A lot of times, I think simply for the fact that women are already by nature closer to Hashem than a man is, that, and for the same reason Hashem said to Moshe Rabbeinu to give the Torah to the women first. Once I think that we get it. Then we become really machmir about it. I think sometimes we become too machmir. And I think that's the biggest complaint in many households, is that there's this almost extremism, and we tend to push. And certainly I am guilty of that, because we learned something. We learned the severity of it, just like the Rav is telling us. We're learning the severity of it. And so therefore, the basic nature of a woman is to protect her household, protect her young. So then we become machmir to the point where sometimes I think we run the risk of choking. So we have to be careful on that. And it says it's unnecessary to remark that someone who has an intelligent wife, the gift of God, has found a good wife. Certainly a thread of grace is draped upon her, and she is beloved unto her husband. However, a man unto whom a challenging lot has fallen, a difficult wife, must be careful. He stands before a great test and requires determination to behave towards her with a peace and affection and honor of the divine presence. So now here we go. We're getting ready to start to get into some very tough topics. Okay, now it's going to start out with the husband. Now, a lot of times I think we hear about the mistreatment of a wife, and believe me, we're getting ready to jump into that in this chapter. It's going to tackle that. But for now, he's going to tackle the topic that we don't quite hear, it's never really spoken too much about. And that is that of a difficult wife. So it's possible, although, a lot of times, the difficult of the wife of a bad husband generally tends to lean towards a physical nature, which is much more serious. But nevertheless, men can end up with a bad wife. And for a second there, I think when I met my husband almost 20 years ago, for sure, I think maybe that statement would have been true of myself. Like I said just a few years ago, I had a very bad midot, very spoiled, and I want, very self-centered, very bad midot. I have to tell you, only by the help of Hashem, my husband really is a tzaddik for having put up with me and all my terrible behavior that I put him through, and my family as well. So I'm very, that's the power of the Torah. It has the power to change your life. So we're going to move on. And it states that these are the subjects of ancient wisdom. A person should be aware that even among eminent men, the fire has fallen, to the extent that our sages note in Yevamot 63a, it is enough that they save us from iniquity and raise our children of Torah. So this, the Rav is telling us that if a man can understand that he has gotten a difficult wife and everything is coming from Hashem, then he understands that this is something that's coming to purify him. And as all of us know, or most of us know, it is much better to get purified in this world than to go in front of the Beit Din of Shemaim, where it's the absolute MS. All your bad midot and character, all your decisions are really, they're held to the highest standard. And so, if you can get this in your mind, that this is, everything comes to be a kapara, right? Better that she should clean me out. I'll give her that. She cleans me out and she raises the children well. So I give her the kavod, I give her the kavod. So it says a person should be cognizant of the saying of our sage in Shabbat 33b, the minds of women are prone to superficiality. People say a woman's hair is long and her mind is short. Therefore, intelligence must originate with him. So this can be true of many women. I think sometimes we can become too preoccupied with very superficial things. Again, in this generation, is a very big problem. What's the latest fashion? What's the latest this? What's the latest that? Why does she have this and I don't? Just all things to be careful of. It says if she violates his will and angers him, he must control his emotions so that he does not become angry with her. And it need not be said to shame, curse, or strike her, has v'shalom. So understand this. There is nowhere that I've ever seen or heard where you're allowed to strike, shame, or curse your wife. I've never seen it. And I have to tell you that my Rav is Haredi, and many of the Ravs that I know are of the same thinking. And I've heard nothing but how you are to really treat your wife with such love and admiration, and be mindful of her feelings at all times. So, but we're going to move on. This is a practice of bores and of frivolous and rash individuals. In actuality, he hurts himself. Rather, with soft speech and sweet words, he should admonish her. Again, here we go again with that soft tongue breaks bones. In any case, he should bear the yoke and be insulted rather than insulting, and accept upon himself the judgment of Shemaim with joy, because each woman is sent to a man from God. And in truth, according to the dictum of our sages in Eruvin 41b, someone who has a bad wife will not see Gehinom. It will be proper to seek a bad wife if he could stand the test, considering the enormous severity of the punishment of Gehinom. So, I guess, that's the beauty of Hashem, right? You suffered in this world, no need to suffer in the next. So the Rav is saying for sure that, your zivug is coming, the zivug of a man is coming from Hashem. And, I remember I was taking Krav Maga once, and they said better to take your licks in here, your beatings in here, than to take it out in the real world. So this is almost the same concept. And sometimes it is very tough. Let us not forget that sometimes there are some men who are dealing with, some women who, are very tough. They're very tough. They want. And I say this out of experience of my own bad midot. I mean, mamash, I don't, maybe we should interview my husband and ask him how he was able, with Hashem's help, to get through, putting up with me. Like, it's a very difficult thing to have a difficult wife. Ask my husband, he'll tell you. So it says he must also accept with love, and he will receive a fine reward for his labor. He must also nurture his love for her in order that the children will not be considered children of the hated one, has v'shalom, and according to his efforts will be his gain. The way to prevent arguments in the house is by not being so exacting in regards to every pruta, that's like the coins, and for the expenditures of the house, because harsh as the grave is the jealousy of a woman to another. So in other words, there are some, I think Harav Mizrahi said a great thing, that when you're going on a potential shidduch, if the guy is stingy, get away, because every single thing, why didn't you buy the cholent meat that was on sale? Why did you get steak instead of chicken? Everything will be a thing, everything. So can you imagine if you want to go and you want to buy a sofa? It's forget it. Your life's going to be miserable. Something to be careful about, because then what happens? Then you look at your friend, has a good husband, has everything, her husband's taking care of her, and all of a sudden the ayin hara can come out. So be mindful of that. Therefore, each man, according to his material blessing, must increase the honor of his home at the proper time, and by doing so appease his wife. For blessing does not reside in a man's home except for the sake of his wife, in Baba Mitzvah 59a. So everybody knows this. If you don't know this, we're going to tell you that this is a very, very well-known concept, that parnasah and the bracha of the house comes from the wife and her happiness. So something to keep in mind. So it says, so great is domestic peace in the holy name, and that the holy name of Hashem was allowed to be erased for Nidarim 66b. Therefore, even by sheer force, must a man stand up and to remove evil from his house, so the divine presence will rest upon his home. It's also another well-known concept that if there's machloket in the house, the Shekhinah will not reside there. There will be no bracha in this house. So it's very important that we, it's like I said yesterday about making mountains into molehills. We have to be very careful and mindful. We have to learn how to pick our battles. So it's included in this love is that a man should not frequently travel far away, because besides causing evil to himself, as we will explain, God willing, in the entry, Maksheva, it also causes physical and emotional pain to his wife, for the love is fierce as death. When her husband is away from her, she is like a storm-tossed boat, and she experiences distress. He should at least be careful to appease her with words in a letter in order to ease her longing. He should send her gifts and items from time to time according to his means, which will cheer up her broken spirit, bring her joy, and alleviate her anguish. It will be considered a great mitzvah, whether he sends her a lot or a little. So imagine, even in back in that time, they had to go, it wasn't like, we're very spoiled. It wasn't like now you have a yeshivot or you have a job, everything is close. And even if it's a little far, you have a car, and most likely the majority of husbands will be back on the same day. Now, that's not to say that there aren't families where the husbands are traveling for extended periods of time. But also, we're very fortunate in this day and age that, you can have FaceTime, there's phones. This was not the case back then. Everything perhaps was in a letter, perhaps. There was no communication the way there is today. So it's advisable that do not take long trips because it causes such distress to the wife emotionally, and it will bring hardship in your marriage. But if you have to go away, keep in touch. That's the long and short of it. That's the skinny of it. It says, how great is the obligation of a wife to love her husband, to honor him as a king at the head of his army, to fear him, to fulfill his will and desire with all her strength. And it says her entire objective and thinking must be to strive to understand her husband's psyche, to know his bidding, and to make his desires her own in order that she should find favor in his eyes. The main focus of this love is the soul, and such should she devote herself to facilitating his service of God, for this is her portion. So this is a concept, again, we kind of touched on it just a little bit earlier, with the excessive talking to your wife. I think, and you can reach out to me if I have this story wrong, but I thought it was Harav Ovadia Yosef, who said the beautiful thing. He was going to, meet the daughter of a Chacham. And I think the first night he went, him and the father, they got so busy in talking that, the time totally passed and the girl fell asleep. And the second day it was the same. And the third day it was the same. And then finally, the girl was already fed up. She was saying, I don't want to meet him anymore. I don't want to know nothing about him, nothing. And, so he came and the father said to Harav Ovadia that, I'm sorry, but my daughter doesn't want to meet with you. And he said, just give me a few minutes with her. And I think within 30 seconds, she came back and they had announced that they were agreeing to get married. And he said, what did you say to her? And he said that he told her that if you give me Olam Hazeh, I will give you Olam Haba. Meaning that, everything I learn in Torah, it's really setting us up in Shemaim. And this is what the Rav is saying here in the Pele Yoetz, that Harav Papo is saying to us, that really, if we can get our husbands on the derech of Torah and studying, this really is going to be like a reward to us as well. So, think about it. If he's coming home, he didn't have to fight, he didn't have to argue, he didn't have to get held up, and he just went right to studying Torah. So his mind was clear. He was in a good frame of mind for doing it, because everyone knows. If you even daven, the minute you daven, already Yitzhak is on top of you, with 10,000 things you have to do and 10,000 scenarios that are like impossible to happen, but somehow they're all affecting you at this moment that you're davening. The same happens to the men. So we should make every effort that we could to make sure that they're in a good frame of mind, because in a way, they are working to build our Olam Haba. It's very important work that they're doing when they're studying Torah. Very important work. She should speak to him sweetly. If she needs to guide him on the good path and console him in his time of anguish, sometimes they need our support as well. And I think, we spoke about this briefly, about the wisdom of our matriarchs. They knew when to hold them, when to fold them. And this is one of those things that women really should be mindful of, that sometimes if you're in a good place, he's not in a good place, and you need to be his rock, and vice versa. Always be available. So she says she should get up in the middle of the night to awaken him, so that so that they may serve God together. It is unnecessary to say that they should be extremely careful not to be a cause of indirect damage by causing him, has v'shalom, to be negligent of the service of Hashem. This woman shall bear her iniquity. So you have to be careful. If you're taking your husband away from the service of Hashem, this is going to be to your detriment. So be forewarned. It is difficult to offer general advice because not all people think alike. Rather, based on the nature of her husband, a wife needs to conduct herself according to his character with grace and insightful understanding in order that their marriage should be successful in love and companionship. The wisdom of the woman has built their homes, and a woman who fears God shall be praised. Mishlei 31:30. Again, the Torah goes out of its way, I think, on a number of occasions to highlight that when a woman is acting in wisdom, such blessing comes to her in her house, and it is considered praiseworthy for her. So it says, besides the need of a woman to be modest, all the kavod of the daughter of the king is within herself, in Tehillim 45:15. And I've mentioned this before in shurs that I've done about tzniut. I think part of the problem our generation is that I don't think we understand anymore what it is to be the daughter of a king. Part of that is that we don't go out half naked for the whole world to see. So this is something that really, it's a very serious thing. And it's very serious because of the fact that for every second you're out there doing it, that's how your averot are compiling. So it says she must not cause men to sin with her eye and her heart. And it says she needs to be too beautiful herself for her husband, and be cautious in regards to cleanliness, purity, financial expenses, so that her husband does not go astray and place his eyes upon another woman. In this regard, her proper actions will bring her closer, and she will find favor in the eyes of her husband. So this is really also another issue, because of the fact as well, we're living in a day and age where tzniut is such a problem. Maybe even the time that Rav Papo was writing this, tzniut probably was not even an issue the way it is now. So can you imagine? I mean, this really is hot off the presses. I think there's times where, sometimes we come either if you're, okay, so here's like one of two scenarios. Either you're working and you come home, you're tired. The first thing you want to do is like for me, I just want to take off my tichel and just, veg out, put on sweatpants, right? And a Rav is saying, Devorah Esther, don't do that. Don't do that. Because your husband is used to seeing all day long these pretty little girls who don't care about your marriage. They wear whatever. And then he's going to come home and you're going to look like a schlampadinka. Not good for you, right? Or sometimes you're in the home and you've been with the kids all day. And you lose track of time. Especially if you have little ones. They wear you out. And you look disheveled. You look everything. So he's also advising that this is not advisable. Hopefully your husband is mindful and he'll give you like a heads up that he's coming home and gives you at least, or if he's like regular in his schedule and then, half hour before he comes, let me take some time out to kind of fix myself, even like whatever it is, to put on a nice clothing, that it doesn't have stains all over the place. Everybody according to his means. Put on a little lipstick, put on a smile, right? A smile goes a long way. So, again, because they're looking at these women, they're not tzniut, even if they're not staring, it's in their face all day long. So, unfortunately, it's almost like, it's like competing with people who have they have no care in the world about breaking up a marriage. So it's really a tough times we're living in, very tough. We have to do everything we can, and Hashem is going to help us. And it says, just as a woman is careful in regards to nidah, challah, and the lighting of candles, so too she must be diligent in regards to respect for her husband. Such is the command of the king unto her. Her reward will increase, and her performance demonstrates that she acts for the sake of her maker and wishes to fulfill the decree of the king of the universe. And our sages said, there is no finer wife than the one who does the will of her husband. All women should be chastised by the story that is related in Nedarim 66b about Baba ben Buta, a woman displayed honor to her husband by hitting Baba Ben Buta on the head under the assumption that this is what her husband had commanded. Baba Ben Buta blessed her that she should have a son just like him for hitting him. She had fulfilled the desire of her husband. Therefore, all women should respect the husbands by the be they great or small. And I believe the story of Baba Ben Buta is that his wife was a little bit hard of hearing, and she had mistaken what he had said. And I think that she thought that he said to break something over his head, but that wasn't what he said. But because, and of course it was, who would, I mean, unless you're in a really bad place with your husband, and maybe there are some people who would take a frying pan, and hit their husband over their head, but, or something, you feel like that. But that was not the case for them. And of course, she thought this to be a very unusual request. Nevertheless, she fulfilled it out of, just being obedient to what her husband said. And so he blessed her. But the wonderful thing is, even also, listen, he understood. He didn't even get mad at her. He understood that she did not understand the command, but that she tried, she acted in a way of obedience, trying to fulfill what she thought was his command. So he blessed her, and I think it's a very heartwarming thing to think about the patience that he had. So it says, there are senseless women who make issue with their husbands over the inability to provide for the needs of the house. It is a tremendous folly in any case. If the husband is truly poor and he does not have adequate means, his pain, depression, shame, and embarrassment at having to reveal to his wife his deficiency is clearly sufficient anguish. The woman needs to be wise and should not add grief to his pain. On the contrary, she should comfort him with pleasant whisper of her lips and say, "Do not be saddened by the lack of money, for God will not desert us forever. Days of delight will come, wherein we will be satiated with food and goodness and pleasantness, and our table will be filled with delights and in the Olam Haba. Not every man has the zechus to both tables in this world is truly vanity, emptiness. Rise up, my Lord, and eat with your bread, for man can live by bread alone." I'm going to say that again because I don't think I read it right. Rise up, my Lord, and eat with joy your bread, for man can live by bread alone. She should speak kind words such as these to him with grace and compassion until he is cheerful and gives thanks for his portion, this goodly woman that is his. So in other words, especially in this day and age, and depending on where you're living as well, if you're coming from a place, especially if a place that has a lot of wealth, and all of a sudden you're not doing as well as everyone else, you have to be very careful because, men, they internalize a lot. They don't wear their heart on their sleeves like we do. And they try to hold in things a lot because I think for the most part, they have a lot of pressures on them from within the home and from outside of the home, especially if you're living in communities where, materialism is a big thing. Then this becomes an even greater pressure. And if he has a wife that's on top of him, just giving him agita about what he's quote unquote not doing, this really can be a serious thing, can lead to a serious depression. And sometimes it's very incapable for a marriage to survive that. And I think this is one of the biggest things that most marriages break up over, which is money. So I think, Harav has given us good advice for both the woman and the man. For the woman, especially if you see this, be wise. You don't even have to have a conversation about this. If your husband's going through a hard time, this is not the time to be spending like there's no tomorrow, racking up all the credit cards until they reach their limit. And it's not the time to, give your husband a lecture every third hour about, where's your parnasa, especially for the fact that it's Hashem who's not, for whatever reason, not giving lo. So we have to be really mindful. And if that's the case, we also have to check ourselves. Because remember, the pipeline of parnasa and abundance and all that's coming from the woman. So, really take note and take stock of all of this. So we're getting ready to close up for the men's portion, and then we're going to continue on the next day for the women's part, which is a little bit more serious. So It says, likewise, a woman needs to consider that when her husband gets angry, I'm sorry, I think I skipped the, so it says, if God improves the financial situation of her husband, and he nevertheless remains stingy and procrastinates in providing them for any undisclosed reason, what difference does it make? Whatever he brought home is what she should serve him. Could he possibly say to her, make me delicacies that I love? She can say to him, from what should I prepare that which you have not provided? So in other words, this, also this is like the flip side. If you have means, Harav is saying, if you have means, if you're a man, you have means, and you're still being stingy with your wife, and you're asking her to, cook a huge seudah, but you're not providing for it, that's an issue. So also, men have to be mindful of that too. And it says, if she makes issue over jewelry, clothing, and physical enjoyment, this too is vanity and futile. It's a futile pursuit. For dry bed with serenity is better than riches with strife. This is also something that I will tell you from experience. This statement is true. If God's great name that was written with sanctity is allowed to be erased for the sake of domestic harmony, how much more so must a husband and wife be willing to forgive each other and nullify their personal will for the sake of peace and relationship? A woman needs to consider that her husband is not wealthy, as she thought, and that he is unwilling to admit that he does not have adequate resources. So, again, Harav is saying, women, as the Eishes how this is a time for us to really shine in front of Hashem's eyes, to not only not give the hard time, but also to realize, there's an embarrassment there for him. And sometimes I don't think we even need to say anything about it. We understand this is a hardship for him. He's going through a difficult time, and the embarrassment of even speaking of it, perhaps he feels he's let you down. It's very difficult. So we all have to be mindful of our husband's feelings as well, and all the pressures that he is going through.